If you ever needed proof that there are in fact some truths that transcend the human experience, be inspired, because I am about to talk from a source promoted on the Focus on the Family webpage. I don't do that very often, I have to say. I'm not sure it's ever happened in my career thus far. However, apparently, what transcends politics and religious frames and sexual orientations and family histories is that most people find it hard to understand what we talk about when we talk about love. Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, is a tool which over the years many people have told me that they found helpful. These are people across a wide range of relationships, and gay couples and feminists alike have been willing to translate beyond the narrow range of examples and occasional finger-wagging Bible quotes, because Chapman's work actually holds a truth, that not everyone expresses love the same way or desires the same thing from those who love them. In the words of the 1970s song, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And yet, not everyone knows it when they see it." For some, what is important, Chapman says, is words of affirmation. And for others, love is expressed best through gifts. My father was one of those people. For others, acts of service are the best expression, while others find physical contact the most satisfactory love language. And in this age of texting and constant connection, there's a beleaguered group who still believes that the focused attention of quality time is the only way to truly feel as if you are loved. And as our actor showed so well, without a common understanding of the language that your beloved is speaking, or at least an understanding that you're speaking different languages, the whole thing can be a giant Tower of Babel. Chapman is actually a form of diversity training, reminding us that we cannot assume that everyone is wired just as we are, or that what we value is the same as what others prize. Even in love, it seems we need to be multilingual. How many times have you felt frustrated because something you just did for someone cost you a lot of effort, but they wanted something more or different? Or you made the effort to make time only to have the other person unable to just sit and be with you? We can feel like the person who discovers a love offering left by their cat, who with pride and skill has left a deceased creature on the welcome mat to be discovered with your bare feet on the way out to get the paper in the morning. This is a love language that we do not speak and often answer with expletives. And it's never, in any relationship, a good feeling when we know we should be grateful and we just aren't. For all his multilingual abilities, Chapman does not quite get the full range of how multilingual we need to be. His entire book is, in fact, very heteronormative, which is a fancy word for the assumption that there's the only kind of relationship that matters is one between a man and a woman. And it only focuses on one kind of love. What the world needs now is love. The second line of the song says, "It's the only thing there's just too little of." Well, maybe, or maybe not. There is another author, Raymond Carver, the author of the book, How Should We Live? And he would argue that we have plenty. He's not so interested in the different ways we express love, as we saw here, as the different loves that might be expressed. He says that we need to give up our international obsession, he calls it an addiction actually, to romantic love and to look back at the wisdom of the ancient Greeks who had a much broader palette of love. He says the Greeks teach us that we not only have to understand a range of love's expression, we have to expand our very vocabulary about love itself and its many forms. What can civilizations of the past teach us, he asks? We use the word love in a very vague way that the ancient Greeks would find inferior. We whisper, "I love you," over a romantic candlelit dinner, but then we sign our email the next morning, "Lots of love." A 15-year-old will talk about falling in love for the first time, and then a couple who's been together for 50 years will say, "Isn't it amazing that we're still in love together after all this time?" The Greeks, you see, had a whole range and vocabulary for love. And Nurik highlights 6 words: eros, philia, ludus, pragma, agape, and Fallingatio. Eros is the word that the Greeks gave to the love of sexual passion, and that was actually the one that they thought the least valuable and the most dangerous. Actually, because of the homophobia that was in their culture at that time, this was actually a term used most often to describe the sexual passion between men, and not the heterosexual super ideal into which it has now been linked. Philia, which is friendship, was seen as more valuable, especially the deep comradeship of men at war together or people who have been through a long trial but remain each other's companions. All forms of philia in the Greek tradition require a depth of relationship, and Kazarnik notes that thousands of Facebook friends would earn us little respect from the ancient Greeks. Now, ludus is one of the fun forms of love. It's the playful and fun love which might be found between strangers on a dance floor, or among children, or lovers in the early stages of their courtship. And it's the carefree counter kind of love, and its counterpoint is pragma, because that is the love which only time and experience can know. Pragma is the mature love and the deep understanding which has been tossed against some of life's harder places, to be polished by the gloss over time of compromise and patience. And from my own life, I celebrate the pragma which allowed my former partner and I to work together 6 days a week for 4 years after we separated, because our love for this congregation was that large. Agape is next. The Greeks had a special reverence and respect for agape, which is the universal love, the charitable love, the kind of love you can feel for a stranger in a distant land. It is the largest, most all-embracing, most radical kind of love which was preached by that religious reformer, Jesus of Nazareth. And on Friday night, I was reminded of agape as I stood on the corner of A and 18th in Antioch along with several hundred other folks demonstrating for the right to live in a violence-free community. Agape was at play when one demonstrator asked another what the sign she held said, because she spoke only English and the sign was in Spanish. The Spanish speaker was a gentle translator in that spirit of all-embracing agape. Now, Kazarnik advises us to take heed of one more part of the ancient Greek vocabulary around love, which is philatia, or self-love. And he notices that the clever Greeks again saw this on a spectrum, because there was a bad form of this love, which was narcissistic and ego-driven, and there was also a good kind, which gives a person the basic security from which to truly be able to extend love to others. Somehow, on this one, we've lost that emphasis on the positive side. Now we know that the feast of St. Valentine's was initially a celebration of charity. Its focus on romantic love began with the antics of the poet Chaucer, and it spread over time because of the efficacy of tying gift-giving to the culture. When mass production of cards and other things entered at the turn of the last century, this practice, which began in Britain and the US, began to be exported across the world, which now all have their own variations on the customs. In Japan, women are expected to give men chocolate, and the Western influence can be blamed for the increased price of red roses in Lebanon at this time of year. And for me personally, I think that this is a very good holiday to have the excuse to wear these red cowboy boots, which I have not worn in worship before. Just that. The modern idea of romantic love came from Persia, specifically from an Englishman's rather torrid and exoticized account through the Arabian Nights tales. It was the first time that the eros love and the pragma love were united. And along the way, Kresnik says, love became a commodity that could be bought and sold, invested in one person who could give us everything. Well, we know that love is more complicated than that. It is as complicated as the real life story, or the original Greek story, of the myth of Cupid, who was anything but a happy-go-lucky shepherd for love. When we talk about love here, I think of it in our time of joys and sorrows, when we recognize that a couple has passed through a milestone of that pragma love of longevity together. I think about it when we recognize here, as we must do today, that this is the first Valentine's Day when people of all sexual orientations can be legally married across our nation, and we need to take a moment to celebrate that. There are forms of love among us that are still in need of notice. To herald those among us who are brave enough to leave relationships where they or someone they loved was endangered is an act of philia or philatia where children are involved. We are a community of memory and hope which holds that long pragma for those who have left this world. And we need to celebrate those whose love takes the hardest forms, staying with a partner over a long illness, loving a difficult parent, a mentally ill child, or a troubled friend over the years. We need to have this richer vocabulary of love. Because what the world does need now is love, sweet love, and not just the love of eros, the loves of friendship and endurance, and love of the self. These are the roses we know will open, found by the side of our daily road on any day and not just on holidays. If we map out this full spectrum of love and then take a tally, we might find that we are not doing as badly as we might think. So what do we talk about when we talk about love? It's a question we need to ask ourselves and be ready to answer in an open-hearted way. I have learned many lessons around love, many of them gifts and a few of them very hard. But one thing that they have taught me is that if we open those channels for the streams of love, it will flow through us and out into the world. Because it matters how we talk to one another about love. It matters that we answer this call of the spirit of life and love to be part of that dance of love. It is the only way we can create a more loving world for ourselves, for those we love, and for all the strangers we would embrace in the largest forms of agape. And with that, I will end with my favorite words on love by the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, who says this: love consists of this, that two solitudes meet, protect, and greet one another. So let us get on with the radical, countercultural business of greeting love.